Welcome to crafting a winning personal statement and resume/CV for graduate studies in humanities. My name is Eileen Diaz, and I'm a first-year student in the CSUB's Master of Arts program of history. I am pleased to introduce Dr. Carol Dell'Amico, Associate Professor of English and Director of the English MA program at CSUB. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Dell'Amico. Please turn on your camera and say hello.
Hello, Eileen. Thank you for that introduction and for being the moderator today. And hello to anyone who is going to watch this video in the future. I hope it is useful to you. And I'll just go ahead and get started. Excuse me, this PowerPoint that is being recorded as a video. Excuse me. All right. So I wanted to say, even before I started talking about the personal statement, that keep in mind that MA programs and doctoral programs have different requirements of students. And every different program is going to ask you for slightly different things. Some MA programs could ask you simply for documents, not necessarily ask you for anything written at all, neither a writing sample or any kind of letter. They could ask for transcripts, and they could ask you to fill out the university's application, that sort of thing. Also, MA programs can be easier to apply to in the sense that some of them will allow you to start the program mid-year in the spring semester, which would mean, right, they have different due dates. Keep that in mind. I wanted to mention that doctoral programs, their due dates for applications tend to be towards the end of the year, and they're not all the same. So you would have to definitely research when that deadline is, partly because, and I get closer to my point now, or why I'm here, some of them ask for a personal statement and tell you exactly what they think a personal statement should be. Others ask for more than one kind of statement, or more than one kind of written document from you, and they could be different lengths, and they can take quite a while to research and compose and for you to feel comfortable with them. So you really want to start this process very early. You also want to start application processes very early, because even in the case of some MA programs, they might want a GRE test of some kind from you or some other test, and there's only certain dates that those tests are offered, and you need to make sure you've taken it in time to have your scores sent by that deadline. Also, it may be that you will want to retake a test. So you might want to, give yourself quite a bit of time. So my advice to you is start your research quite early and know exactly what is going to be asked of you so you can begin your process as early as you need to, because it varies so much from program to program. And also know that, yes, in the case of some MA programs, you might need an undergraduate paper, and in all PhD programs, pretty much you are probably going to be asked to send some sort of writing sample, some sort of research paper or something like that, in addition to a personal statement. But no matter what, you want to make sure that in any program, if you are being asked to provide a personal statement, you read what their directions for that statement is. And when you write it, you call it what they call it, because not all programs are going to ask you for a personal statement. It might be titled somewhat differently. Either way, just make sure that even though you might have a lot of things that you repeat from statement to statement, there might be variations. So be prepared for that. You may not be able to send the same statement to every single program. My biggest piece of advice for you is buy or consult. I know that the Graduate Student Center has purchased or is in the process of purchasing this precise book. There are other books like this, but what happens is that various publishers, scholastic publishers, come out with books like this, graduate admissions essays. Write your way into the graduate school of your choice, because you might think that you know what these programs want, and you might read the descriptions of what they want very carefully and think that's all you need to go on. But I have to say that the first time that I applied to graduate school, I didn't get in, and that was really because I hadn't done my homework as to what they really wanted from me. And you may say, well, wait a minute, if I write a heartfelt, honest, personal statement in response to the prompt and directions that they give, why isn't that enough? Why do I have to consult one of these books or buy one of these books or do research into what they want? And part of it has to do with the fact that many programs get a great many applications and they limit the number of students that they let into the program. And part of the way that they make their selection process is based on the personal statement, and specifically on whether or not you know what a personal statement is supposed to be like because you've done your homework. You've looked at one of these books that the Graduate Student Center will have there if you do not want to buy one. So what happens is you say, but this is like jumping through hoops. Why do I have to jump through these hoops if I'm a good candidate with strong grades and I wrote, a grammatically sound, heartfelt letter? And again, what I'm saying to you is that from the point of view of the program is they're looking for, if you're in a master's degree program, or a doctoral program, you are sending a message that you want to professionalize in a certain way. And one way that you prove to them that you are indeed someone who is going to finish that program and do well and be a credit to that program when you go out into the working world is by already signaling that, yes, I'm ready to professionalize. I've done my homework. I know what a personal statement is supposed to be. I know what a CV or an academic CV is supposed to be. I have done my homework indeed, and I'm ready. And when I look back on that time that I applied and didn't get in, I really wasn't ready. I wasn't ready. I didn't know really all that I was getting into. And I think it showed in my application materials. So yes, you do want to give them what they want, but that's not in a bad sense. It is this signal that you're sending that you're a good candidate, you're serious, you're going to finish the program, and you're going to be a credit to school. Okay. And the reason why you want to consult the book is, again, because you might be surprised at what a good statement might be like. For example, a good personal statement is going to start very strong. It is going to grab the reader's attentions, not in any fake or ostentatious or overdone way, but it is going to set you apart, or it is going to show in what way you are somehow something. It's going to set you apart. And I know that as I'm an English literature professor and I teach students how to write the essay, and I really tend not to recommend flashy openings to academic essays. In fact, overly flashy openings that you can't live up to in the rest of the essay are, in my mind, to be avoided. So I was actually surprised when I looked at these books of winning essays at how all the winning essays had this very distinctive beginning, right? To make some sort of, impression on the readers. But again, thinking of these admission committees, they're made up of a very limited number of professors who might have a great number of statements to read. And the last thing, and they're looking for ways in some cases to weed out applications. So if you don't make them want to read your statement, they're not going to read it. That will be one way for them to say, not this person, right? Because there's limited seats, there's a limited number of students, depending on the program that they can let in, and they are looking for ways actually to, winnow out, right, to narrow the field. So another reason is to get the book, is to look at them. And when you get the book, you can read through a whole bunch of the essays and get a feel for what the format is or what goes into the essays. And then you put that book away for a few weeks and forget all those essays, because when you read them all and they're fresh in your mind, you might have this instinct to almost mimic something that you read. You'll want to do the same thing, but that's not what you want to do. What you want to do is say, oh, okay, I get it. So this is what a good personal statement looks like. And then you put that book aside, forget about it. And these books tend to have chapters that help you to sort of discover something that's going to work for you or that's true for you. They have prompts and so on and questions for you to think about. And then you can decide what is going to work for you, right? And you can gather that information or fashion that opening that is distinctive without being, hideously flashy or anything like that. So I cannot stress enough, to consult or buy one of these books. You have to do it. Now, what goes into the statements? When you look at these samples, you'll see that various things that make a lot of sense go into it. And depending on who you are, there may be more emphasis on one thing or another. You are who you are, and you should never feel inadequate that you might not have, that you may say, well, I haven't ever really done any substantive research. I didn't really do any massive research as an undergraduate. Oh, I as a senior, I wrote a couple of essays where I did some research, but those databases of research were overwhelming. I didn't work closely with a professor on any research. These are not things to actually worry about. All you need to do is whatever you have going for you, you present it in the best possible light, and you put in what you can put in. And if you're a good candidate, it will come out. So don't worry. And especially if you have you have to have a nicely written statement, right? So one thing you will do, though, even if you haven't done any research yet, is you will be identifying your interests or your plans for research. And again, they might not be very extensive. You may, especially if you're going into a doctoral program, you may still feel very vague about the field, or you may not be sure if you're really going to commit to what you think right now you're interested in. That's okay. That's okay. You don't have to fake it or anything. You can say what you're interested in, what you've done so far, what you're thinking you might do, or you already have a very good sense of things. Just as long as you realize, of course, you have to identify some interests or plans for research, and you don't have to feel bad if you end up changing things once you're in. You want to let the program know that you've done some research on the school and the department, and you don't have to exhaust yourself necessarily, but you do want to go to the department website. You do want to take a look at the faculty that is working in the areas that you're working in. You probably want to mention a faculty name or two. That might mean that you might read maybe some of their recent research, or if they published a book 5 years ago, or they had an article 3 years ago or last year, you might look at it or skim it or something. And again, you don't have to, you may be applying to many different schools, some harder to get into, some easier to get into, some mediums. You don't have to, spend, if you're going to be applying to a lot of different schools, there's only so much time you have, right? I mean, you could turn this into a full-time job, but you might not have that much time. You might have family, you might have a job, you might still be going to school. So no need to exhaust yourself, but to simply know some professors' names who do work in the areas that you are interested in, to take a peek at maybe something that they've done, and to be able to mention that. I recently read, quote, the article name by Professor so-and-so and admired it a great deal. And it would certainly be a great opportunity or honor to work with that person. I mean, even that is enough. Again, it's these signals that you're someone who kind of understands that graduate students, work with professors or pursue research, and they're little signals you send without exhausting yourself by researching something. You can say something about the school or its location, whatever you want, to give them a sense that you've gone onto their website and taken a peek at one or two things. You can mention some of the professors that you worked with, if you did, or if you're coming out of a master's program, going into a doctoral program, and you wrote a thesis, you could mention some professors here by name, and what you worked. And of course, you're going to mention your thesis if you wrote a thesis, or even if you wrote comp exams instead of a thesis, you can say what areas you decided to specialize in and what you particularly enjoyed about some area that you specialized in, or something that you read that was very influential to you. So these specifics, kind of names, right, of professors in the program that you're going to, or perhaps that you worked with here, or maybe an influential bit of scholarship that you read. These little concrete specifics lend credibility to your statement, and I could recommend that you do that. Again, though, you will have that book for you to look at as well. And for the resume CV, again, look, when I applied, they were not asking for these. And I did ask some of my students who I recently wrote letters for if they were asked for a CV. And the two that I asked both said yes. Interesting. And a resume or a CV, again, it must never be something that you feel anxious about. You may be someone who had so many different commitments that you did not necessarily, you don't have any professional work experience in the area that you're trying to go into for graduate school, or you've had the same part-time job at a clothing store since middle school, right, or something, and you don't act, or high school, and so it doesn't necessarily sound very scholastic, and you never worked in the tutoring center, or you didn't really do that much any community service, or you haven't volunteered. These are not things that you have to worry about. All you do is you put what you can on this CV. It's just documenting things, showing that you're fulfilling the requirements, and programs know that people's lives are different. However, you'll have your name, you'll have your contact information with your professional sounding email address, right? And not your nickname. You'll have your education, right? Your educational history, which of course everyone can have. Any kind of professional experience, no matter what it is. If you've had jobs, that's a good sign, right? Even if you haven't had jobs, don't worry. If you've done any presentations, even if you, however minor, you can put their title and the location and the year. If you went to any conferences, even maybe as a participant, or you participated in a round table, volunteer community service, any honor societies or professional or scholastic associations, any grants, awards, and languages. You may be bilingual, trilingual, multilingual. You may not speak their language very well, but you have the ability to read it, right? You may, and you could say, English native speaker, French reading, Spanish reading, whatever you have is what you can put down there. And that will be part of and it can be one page. That's perfectly all right. Okay. Now that is my advice in a nutshell. And any questions from Eileen, who is here right now, but you're in an MA program already, Eileen. So I don't know if you were going to go on after this or what.
I'm not so sure about that just yet. However, I mean, this was helpful for me. I luckily knew my professors and they didn't really need this much information from me. But I think it's a really good thing to know. I had never heard of a CV until my last semester of senior year, from Dr. Rodriguez. One of our assignments was to cultivate a CV. And I was like, what the heck is that? I have no idea. But having done that now, it's helpful. I didn't have to use it personally, like I said, because I knew my professors. Since it's a pretty small, I'd say it's a pretty small program. I don't have anything to compare it to. But I was able to form professional relationships with them. And so they knew me very well. Dr. Kate Mulry, I believe she asked for an essay of mine. So I just sent one over. The others, when I asked for recommendations, they knew me. So, I mean, I'm very involved in the program itself, even now. So, I mean, that's just me. But for students who don't necessarily have that, let's see, what's the question I want to ask?
How do you maybe plump up a CV if you think it's a little thin or something like that?
Yeah, how would they go about, students who are working and probably don't spend all that much time on campus in their studies, to be able to form these relationships with professors, or participate in events. How would they buff up their CV?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to say. I mean, I think that some CVs, even for someone, I mean, when I was an undergraduate, I would say that I felt I was very active, but I was not terribly active on campus, as a matter of fact, right? I wasn't a member of clubs. I certainly wasn't giving presentations, or I wasn't doing really any of this stuff. So had I been asked for a CV, it really would have been work study jobs, right? That I got through financial aid. And that's what it would have been, that I worked in the art department and I worked for the art history department. And it probably would have just been really job experience, cleaning houses. I mean, I would have probably had mostly my work experience, and then, fast forward to languages, right? So that's what I'm saying, is that some students are out and about and others aren't. And if this is not something that should worry you or intimidate you at all. It's a new requirement that I suppose some programs have, but I'm sure that they know very well, right? That some students have very complicated lives. And that can, if that is something that actually you feel that you need to explain, you might find a way of inserting that into your personal statement, right? Whereas, I've been a dedicated scholar, my entire life, while I've, my job, my need to work has meant that I wasn't on campus as much as other students. I was always, profoundly and deeply involved in my, studies and this, that, and the other. I didn't have also, necessarily close relationships with professors, and certainly, and I didn't go to a master's program, which I did before the doctoral program, a school that was even close to geographically, where I'd done my BA. So again, no need to worry. But yes, what's the advantage, I think, for students who are doing their undergraduate degree at Cal State Bakersfield and then taking advantage of one of our MA programs, it's great, because we're not the largest school in the world. We will have room for them if they qualify, and they might be able to, and professors will know them. And so that's so CSUB is a great graduate school resource for CSUB students. And it's sneezed at, right? It's when you move beyond that you may say, oh, my CV seems scanty. I wouldn't worry about the CV at all. I honestly wouldn't. But if you're someone who then thinks, okay, I wonder if when I finish the MA, I'm going to go on to a doctoral program. This would totally depend on your field, whether a terminal degree makes perfect sense in an MA, or whether you might end up going for a doctoral program. You might then be strategic, right, in an MA program and do a couple of things that would look good on a CV for a doctoral program, right? But I think that even if, by the way, both students who told me they had to have the ResumeCV were applying to doctoral programs after having done the English MA here. So question, are MA programs asking for these? I wonder how many of them are. It's hard to say. It really depends on the school and the program. But I can't help repeating these things. There's never any reason to feel inadequate. It's simply knowing, giving them the documents they want and making sure everything is polished and there. And then to some extent, even if you apply to programs out of state that you really wanted to go to, and they're impacted programs that don't accept a lot of people, not getting accepted really doesn't mean anything at all either. It's not a statement about you. It's actually what happens with programs that get more applications than they need. They have slots they need to fill. They want a certain number of students at the usual age group, but they want some older students. They want some students who are rural students. And while you may fall into the rural, say, student slot, they only have 4 slots for them. And you may be in the final group, and then they go literally with eyes closed. Those are the ones that get in. So, getting rejected from a program absolutely means very little. And that's why people are very told, apply. Applications cost money, which is an issue, but apply to as many types of programs as you can, and as many as you can. And with doctoral programs, be aware that West Coast students do much better on the East Coast getting in, and vice versa, because of these desires for diversity. Now, if you're rooted here with your family and everything, that's not an option. But you just have to know that programs need a certain type of diversity. And if they are going to categorize your application, at a certain point, there's still maybe more for that particular category, and then it's a random choice. That's why you increase your chances by sending out more applications.
I think one of the issues, or I don't know, challenges with writing a CV or your resume is, especially for graduate school, is imposter syndrome, right? So not thinking that you are good enough to be there. Even now, I've been in my program, I'm coming up on a year almost, and I know sometimes I'm like, I don't deserve to be here, but I mean, obviously if I made it in, I qualify, right? So it's that matter of trying to figure out how to convince the board or the committee to accept your application when you yourself don't feel 100%, you know, and
Well,
that's an issue.
it is an issue, but okay, it's funny. You can travel to different parts of the country, and I've done my MA was in Cal State Los Angeles. My PhD was in New Jersey at Rutgers, and I met all sorts of different people at those schools, and I've lived in different states. And what is jaw-dropping to me in many places where I've been is the sense of entitlement, true, that some people grow up with. And I'm like, where does that come from? And the thing that also makes my jaw drop as a professor is every single class is, how do I have so many incredibly intelligent students in my class? Thank God, because I can steal stuff from their papers and use it in my lecture next semester. And who are these people, right? They're so much, they're so highly intelligent. And I hope if they want to go to graduate school, it's their choice that they go. I certainly, encourage people to do it. But yes, the imposter syndrome, oh my goodness. It's such I want to say, a waste of energy. You don't even know that there's no reason why you shouldn't try. And to get help with your materials, have professors read your materials. What I wanted to say in that last session about people who are shy about asking professors for letters, it's part of our job. Mm-hmm. Part of our job is to provide our students with letters. And so you have every right to ask for a letter. That doesn't mean necessarily that just by asking you're done. You help the professor to write it. And then you also get a sense, am I going to get a good letter from this professor, right? But again, it's also, I consider it part of my job to, when my students apply to a doctoral program, I say, I want to read your personal statement. I don't want you to send it in without me reading it, because also actually my reputation's on the line. If I'm writing you a letter of recommendation, I know you're great, but I want to make sure that they know you're great. And you need to be doing what you need to be doing to present that. So the imposter syndrome, how I wish it wasn't, it didn't exist, because actually, right, and having taught at Cal State LA, I cannot tell you how beautifully, right, students at Cal State Bakersfield measure up to anyone. But you guys have to have proper perspective, I think, that, here we are, a lot of us struggle, and this is, everyone, I guess there are people in every part of the world who struggle or whatever, but, we are in the United States. This is the state of California, and this is the largest public university system in this country, and I suppose, therefore, in the world. And there are a lot of people around the world who would do anything to be at Cal State Bakersfield. It's a university in the United States. I mean, you are actually in a four-year university, in a California four-year university. You can do what you want. You can do what you want. So you just work hard on your classes is what you do. Try to get the grade point average solid, and get professors to help you and tutors to help you if there's any shakiness there. And from that point on, don't think about yourself. Think about, what do they want and how do I do it? Find sample Scholastic resumes, look at a bunch of them, figure out which ones are the real ones that should be on the web and which ones shouldn't be on the web, and you model yours after those. buy those books that show those letters. Don't think, just follow the format. And don't worry about any feelings of trepidation or, this imposter syndrome, because there are forms, there's a form to fulfill, a format to follow. Follow the format, do the steps, and you'll be fine. There's no work that you can't do if you study and you seek the help of your professors. And there's always going to be professors who are going to be willing to help you. So you never have to worry that you're going to get in over your head. You're not. You just won't. As long as you put in the work that you can put in and you seek the help that you need, you're going to be fine.
Thank you for that. And for, I guess, the students that would be watching this in the future, the Graduate Student Center does have imposter syndrome workshops, that just trying to find resources for you, because it's a real thing and we can really suck sometimes.
Yes.
So just, resources like that we offer at the Graduate Student Center. I don't know the exact date of it, but I do know we are having one this semester. So if you would be interested in that, it's at the Graduate Student Center website, csub.edu. And you can just go to workshops and you can find it there. Do you have any other closing remarks? We have a bit of time, but I'm all out of questions for now.
No, actually, I should have thought of that closing remarks, except that just remember that it is your professor's job to help you to take the next step in your education. So even though I agonized and felt embarrassed when I would ask professors for help and for the letters, and I'm like, do I have to bring them a bottle of wine or something when it's done? Or, I felt so bad. But you know what? It's part of their job. So, you are entitled to that. And imposter syndrome, let me say one thing about that. Everything you are here because of, your hard work. You don't have all this other stuff propping you up. And you don't have parents spending, $120,000 on tuition to buy those A's and B's. You've done everything yourself. So you are incredibly deserving, and just go to these workshops and ask professors for help and ask them to read your personal statement and to look over your CV. They'll be happy to do it, and find the professors who will be happy to do it, because they're out there. They're out there.
Of course. Yeah, I felt the same. Very scared to ask, but I knew I had a handful of professors who are more than happy to always write me a letter of recommendation. Chris Livingston in the Walter Stern Library, HRC, the Historical Research Center. He was my professor, then I was a student tutor for him, and now he's my boss. So, I mean, just, it all starts with, in my opinion, just paying attention in class and asking questions and just showing even the smallest of interest in the topic or the subject. And that's how those professional relationships form. And that's how you get those really good personal statements. Letters of recommendation.
That's
And
right.
that's how, now I'm in the committee of the Public History Institute. That's something I could add to my resume and CV. It's small steps. And
that's a beautiful thing for a CV. If suddenly you finish the master's program and decide, oh my God, I have to have a PhD, you will see. But I'll say this one last thing is give your professors lots of time to write the personal statements, because they are very busy. So if you have a deadline for an application and you only give them a few weeks, that is not good. So that's part of why you start working well in advance. You want to actually, contact them 2 or 3 months in advance. And then after a month, you kind of remind them very nicely and politely. Do you remember, you have to write the thing, and they'll go, oh, yes, I haven't forgotten. And they might not start it, but you want to ask well in advance. And that was for the letter of recommendation, but the personal statement, again, just give them time to get back to you. So you finish it, make sure there's still a good month before your deadline if you're asking them to look at your personal statement and work with you on it. It's just professors need time, but they'll help you.
And not only that, you get the peace of mind of knowing a month before you submit, you have everything ready.
That's right. Nothing rushed.
Alrighty, well, thank you so much, Dr. Dell'Amico. I think now is the time to return to the main session.
Okay.
So thank you again.